Amber's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the grimy bar counter, her knuckles white with desperation. The manager's face was inches from hers, his breath reeking of whiskey and rage. "Please stop," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks, but her voice was lost in the chaos of the crowded downtown bar. His hand rose again, and she flinched, closing her eyes against what was coming. But the blow never landed. The entire bar fell silent, the kind of silence that only comes when death walks into a room. Amber's eyes flew open. The manager had frozen mid-motion, his face drained of all color, staring at something, someone behind her. She felt the presence before she saw him. A wall of controlled violence, expensive cologne mixing with the scent of leather and power. "Touch her." A voice like gravel and silk commanded from behind her back. "And you won't have hands to regret it with." Amber's heart stopped. She knew that voice. Everyone in the city knew that voice, even if they'd never heard it in person. Matteo Ricci, the name whispered in fear across every borough. The man who controlled everything from the docks to City Hall. And he was standing directly behind her. This is just the beginning of Amber's story. And what happens next will change her life forever. If you want to discover how she ended up in this moment and what Matteo Ricci does next, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every view helps bring more stories like this to life. 24 hours earlier, Amber Taylor's biggest worry had been making rent. She rushed through the narrow streets of Brooklyn, her worn sneakers splashing through puddles left by the morning rain. The strap of her bag dug into her shoulder. Weighted down by textbooks, she studied between shifts. NYU nursing program, her ticket out of this life, if she could just hold on long enough to finish. The morning shift at Sacred Heart Hospital ended at 2 p.m. She had exactly 18 minutes to get across town to her second job at Richie's Bistro, an upscale Italian restaurant in Manhattan that catered to people who spent more on one meal than she made in a month. Amber made it with 3 minutes to spare, bursting through the employee entrance and tying her black apron around her waist. Her fingers worked automatically, muscle memory from 2 years of serving entitled customers who never looked twice at the girl bringing their food. "Table 7 now," barked Christine, the floor manager, not bothering with pleasantries. "VIP section." Amber's stomach tightened. VIP section meant high-pressure tables, businessmen, politicians, people who could get her fired for the smallest mistake. She grabbed her order pad and pushed through the heavy velvet curtain that separated the common dining area from the exclusive section. The atmosphere changed instantly, quieter, more refined. The lighting was dimmer, more intimate. Every table was occupied by men in suits that cost more than her car, if she had a car. Table 7 sat in the back corner, the most private spot in the restaurant. 6 men occupied it, all of them radiating the kind of confidence that came with power and money. But Amber's eyes were drawn to the man at the head of the table like a magnet. Matteo Ricci. She'd seen his picture in newspapers, always in the society pages rather than the crime section. His lawyers were too good for that, but photographs didn't capture the reality of him. Late 30s with dark hair that was just slightly too long to be completely proper, a jawline that could cut glass, and eyes so dark they appeared black in the restaurant's low lighting. A precisely trimmed beard framed his face, and she could see the edge of an intricate tattoo crawling up his neck, disappearing beneath his white collar. He wore his wealth like a weapon. The suit was Italian, probably custom-made. His watch caught the light. Peckfipe, if she had to guess. Everything about him screamed danger wrapped in sophistication. Amber approached the table on legs that suddenly felt unsteady. "Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Amber, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with drinks?" 5 of the men barely glanced at her, already discussing something in low voices. But Matteo Ricci looked up, and the full force of his attention hit her like a physical thing. His eyes swept over her face, and for a moment, just a moment, something flickered in their depths. Recognition, curiosity. It was gone before she could identify it. "Brunello da Montalcino," he said, his voice smooth and commanding. "The 2015. Bring the bottle." Amber scribbled the order, grateful her hand didn't shake. "Of course, and for the rest of the gentlemen." As she took the remaining orders, She became acutely aware that Mateo's gaze never left her. It wasn't predatory or uncomfortable. It was something else. Something that made her skin tingle and her heart race in a way she absolutely could not afford. She escaped to the wine cellar, pressing her back against the cool stone wall and taking deep breaths. Get it together, Amber. He's just another customer. A dangerous, powerful, devastatingly handsome customer who could probably have you disappear without a trace. The thought should have frightened her. Instead, it sent an unwanted thrill down her spine. Amber retrieved the wine, a bottle that cost $800, she noted with dismay, and returned to table 7. She presented it to Mateo with the practiced grace she'd perfected over countless shifts. Excellent choice, sir. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile. I doubt you can tell a $800 bottle from an $80 one. It wasn't said cruelly, just matter of fact, and he was right. She couldn't, but something in his tone, the casual dismissal of her knowledge, sparked an ember of defiance she usually kept carefully buried. You're right, she said, meeting his eyes directly for the first time. I can't afford to learn the difference, but I can tell you that Brunello de Montalcino comes from the Sangiovese grape grown exclusively in the hills surrounding Montalcino in Tuscany. The 2015 was an exceptional vintage year. Warm summer, perfect harvest conditions. It should have notes of cherry leather and tobacco. The entire table fell silent. Mateo's eyes widened almost imperceptibly, and something dangerous and intrigued sparked in their depths. Where, he said slowly, did a waitress from Brooklyn learn about Italian wine? Amber's defiance crumbled, replaced by panic. She'd overstepped, drawn attention, broken the first rule of surviving in this world. Never stand out. I study, she stammered online during breaks. I'm sorry if I don't apologize. Mateo cut her off, his voice sharp but not unkind. Open it. Her hands only shook slightly as she uncorked the bottle and poured a small amount into his glass. He swirled it, inhaled, sipped. His eyes never left her face.
Perfect, he pronounced. Pour everyone.
Amber completed the task in silence, aware of every eye at the table, now watching her with new interest. When she finished, Mateo spoke again. What's your name? Amber, sir. Amber Taylor. Amber. He tested her name on his tongue like he was tasting another expensive wine. Bring us the tasting menu. All courses. And Amber, he waited until she met his eyes again. I want you to describe each dish in Italian. Her heart stopped. Sir, I don't speak Italian.
Don't you?
His smile was knowing predatory. Then how did you pronounce Brunello de Montalcino with a perfect Tuscan accent? She'd been caught. Amber's mind raced, searching for an escape that didn't exist. My grandmother, she said finally, the truth tumbling out. She was from Florence. She taught me food and wine vocabulary before she died. But I only know those words. I can't actually. Interesting. Mateo interrupted, leaning back in his chair. His finger traced the rim of his wine glass, the movement casual, but somehow threatening. Very interesting. Amber fled to the kitchen, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her rib cage. She'd done something wrong, drawn the attention of the most dangerous man in New York, and she didn't even understand what she'd done or why it mattered. The rest of the service passed in a blur. She delivered each course, described each dish with the Italian words her grandmother had lovingly taught her as a child, and felt Matteo Ricci's eyes on her like a brand. When the check came, over $3,000, he added a tip that made her gasp. $2,000, more than she made in a month. As the men rose to leave, Matteo paused beside her. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. Tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, broad-shouldered, radiating controlled power. You work too hard, Amber Taylor, he said quietly. For her ears alone. 3 jobs? 4? How did you the shadows under your eyes? The calluses on your hands that don't come from restaurant work. The textbook corner I can see in your bag. His hand moved, and she flinched instinctively. His jaw tightened. I'm not going to hurt you. I know, she whispered, though she didn't know anything of the sort. His hand completed its journey, pulling something from his jacket pocket. A business card, cream-colored and expensive, with only a name and phone number embossed in black. "You're wasted here," he said, pressing the card into her palm. "Call this number. I have a position available." "Mr. Ritchie, I can't." "Mateo," he corrected. "And you can. You will." It wasn't a suggestion. He walked away, his men falling into formation around him like a well-oiled machine. If you're enjoying this story and want to see what happens next, please subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means everything to us as we continue bringing these stories to life. Amber stared at the card in her hand, her mind reeling. What had just happened? That night, after her shift at the bar across town, her third job, the one Mateo had somehow known about, Amber lay in her tiny studio apartment and stared at the card on her nightstand.
Calling it would be a mistake.
She knew that Mateo Ritchie wasn't offering her a job out of kindness. Men like him never did anything without reason, without agenda. But the money from tonight's tip would cover rent for 2 months and the promise of a real position, something better than killing herself across 3 jobs. She reached for her phone, then stopped. Not yet. She needed to think clearly, not make decisions while exhausted and desperate. Amber closed her eyes, trying to sleep, but all she could see was Mateo's dark eyes. The way they looked at her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. She didn't know it then, but her life had already changed. The moment she'd met his eyes across table 7, the moment she'd spoken Italian with her grandmother's accent, the moment she'd caught the attention of Mateo Ritchie, her fate had been sealed. Amber managed to avoid calling the number for 3 days. 3 days of double shifts, of aching feet and demanding customers. 3 days of the card burning a hole in her wallet, Mateo's number memorized, though she'd never intended to learn it. On the 4th day, she returned to her apartment at 2 a.m. to find her landlord's eviction notice taped to her door. The timing felt like fate or a curse. She called the number at 2:17 a.m., not thinking clearly, not caring that it was the middle of the night. A man answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the hour. "Miss Taylor," he said as if he'd been waiting. "Mr. Ritchie will see you at 10 a.m. A car will collect you at 9:30. "How did you know?" The line went dead. Amber stared at her phone, her heart racing. She hadn't given her name, hadn't given her address, but somehow, Mateo Ritchie already knew both.
She didn't sleep.
At 9:30 a.m. exactly, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up outside her building. The driver, a man built like a tank in an expensive suit, opened the back door without a word. The drive took them out of Brooklyn, across the bridge into Manhattan, then further uptown than Amber had ever been. The buildings here weren't just expensive. They were monuments to wealth. Doormen in uniforms that cost more than her monthly rent. Windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, offering views of a city that belonged to the people inside them. The SUV pulled into an underground garage beneath a building that scraped the sky. Amber was ushered into a private elevator that required a key to operate. Her escort inserted it, pressed the button marked PH, and the elevator shot upwards so fast her stomach dropped. The doors opened directly into an apartment. No, not an apartment. A penthouse that occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a 360-degree view of Manhattan. The furniture was minimalist and obviously designer. Everything was in shades of black, white, and gray, except for occasional splashes of deep red that matched the wine they'd shared that night. "Miss Taylor," Amber spun. Mateo stood in the doorway of what appeared to be an office, dressed more casually than at the restaurant, black slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing more of the intricate tattoos that covered his forearms. Even in casual dress, he radiated power. "Mr. Ritchie Mateo," he corrected, moving toward her with the fluid grace of a predator. "Come, we have much to discuss." He led her to a seating area by the windows. Up close, in the harsh morning light, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow, details that made him human instead of the untouchable figure from the restaurant. "Coffee?" he offered. "You looked like you didn't sleep." I couldn't, she admitted. You scared me. Good. He settled into the chair across from her, his dark eyes assessing. Fear is healthy. It keeps you careful. But Amber, I didn't bring you here to harm you. Quite the opposite. Then why am I here? Matteo leaned forward, elbows on his knees, giving her his complete attention. Tell me about your grandmother. The question caught her off guard.
What?
Your grandmother? From Florence.
The one who taught you Italian.
Amber swallowed hard. She died when I was 12. But before that, she lived with us. She'd cook, teach me about food and wine, tell me stories about Italy. She said I had an ear for language, that I pronounced everything perfectly. Tears pricked her eyes, unexpected. She was the only family member who ever believed I could be something more. And what do you want to be? A nurse, Amber said immediately. I'm in my second year at NYU. If I can just finish, I can have a real career. Help people. Not. She gestured at herself. Not spend my life serving food to people who don't see me. I saw you, Matteo said quietly. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning Amber didn't understand. I need someone, Matteo continued, his tone shifting to business. Someone smart, someone who can move through my world without drawing attention. Someone who understands Italian culture and can pass in high society settings with the right training. I don't understand what kind of position.
Personal assistant, he said.
You'd manage my calendar, accompany me to events, handle correspondence, learn the business. His eyes locked with hers. The legal business. Amber laughed, the sound bitter. Mr. Ritchie, I'm not stupid. Everyone knows what you are. Do they? He stood, moved to the window, his back to her. Everyone thinks they know. But very few understand the difference between reputation and reality. Yes, I come from a family with a complicated history, but my businesses are legitimate. Restaurants, real estate, importers, export, all legal, all clean. Then why do you need me? Matteo turned back and something in his expression made her breath catch. Vulnerability quickly masked. Because I'm tired of being surrounded by people who fear me or want to use me. You don't want anything from me except an opportunity to survive. That's rare, valuable, and the pay, $80,000 a year to start, plus benefits including full tuition coverage for your degree. You'd work Monday through Friday, occasional evening events. Your weekends would be yours. Amber's head spun. $80,000. She could quit all 3 jobs, focus on school, actually sleep. What's the catch? Smart girl. Matteo's lips curved. The catch is that my world is dangerous. Not for me, he added quickly, seeing her expression. But I have enemies, people who would hurt anyone close to me to get to me. If you work for me, you become visible. Protected, but visible. Why me? Amber whispered. You could have anyone. Because you spoke to me like a person, not a god or a monster. Because you have your grandmother's gift for language. And you don't even realize how rare that is. Because he stopped, jaw tightening, because I looked into your eyes at that restaurant and saw someone fighting as hard to survive as I once did. Someone who deserves better. The honesty in his voice stole her breath. This close, she could see the man beneath the reputation. Lonely, burdened, human. I'll need to think about it, Amber said, though her mind was already made up. No, you won't. Matteo pulled out his phone, typed something. Seconds later, Amber's phone buzzed. That's a deposit. First month's salary. Consider it a signing bonus. You start Monday. Amber looked at her phone and nearly dropped it. $80,000 sitting in her account.
Real.
Actually real. I could take this and run, she pointed out. You could, Matteo agreed. But you won't because you're not that kind of person. And because you're curious about this world, about me. He stepped closer, and she caught his scent. Expensive cologne undercut with something darker, more primal. Aren't you, Amber? Yes, she whispered, unable to lie. Good, he extended his hand. Then we have a deal. Amber placed her hand in his, and the moment their skin touched, electricity shot through her. His fingers were warm, strong, slightly calloused. He held her hand a moment longer than necessary, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture that felt almost tender. Marcus will take you home. Mateo said, his voice rougher than before. Be ready Monday at 8 a.m. Dress professionally. We have a lot of work to do. Amber nodded, not trusting her voice. As she turned to leave, Mateo called her name. Amber, one more thing. He waited until she faced him again. The eviction notice, it's been handled. You won't be bothered again. How did you? I know everything about you. His expression was unreadable. Every job, every debt, every fear. That's how I protect what's mine. And as of this moment, you're mine to protect. The possessive words should have frightened her. Instead, for the first time in years, Amber felt safe. The ride home passed in a daze. When she entered her apartment, she found the eviction notice gone, replaced by a new lease agreement with rent, reduced to half what she'd been paying. A note in bold handwriting simply read, "Focus on school AR." Amber sank onto her threadbare couch and stared at her phone at the number that had changed everything. She'd crossed a line today, stepped into a world she didn't understand, made a deal with a man more dangerous than she could imagine. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was the loneliness in Mateo's dark eyes. The way his hand had trembled almost imperceptibly when he touched hers. What have I gotten myself into, she wondered. She'd find out soon enough. Monday was only 2 days away. Monday morning arrived too fast and too slow all at once. Amber stood in front of her closet, staring at the limited options. Dress professionally, Mateo had said. Her most professional outfit was a black pencil skirt with a small tier she'd carefully stitched and a white blouse she'd bleached 3 times to keep crisp. It would have to do. At 7:45 a.m., her phone buzzed. Not the SUV driver, Mateo himself. There's a package at your door. Open it. Amber opened her door to find 3 large boxes from Saks Fifth Avenue. Inside was a complete professional wardrobe. Tailored blouses, perfectly fitted slacks, 2 designer dresses, and shoes that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. Everything in her exact size. Her phone buzzed again. I know everything, remember? Including your size. Wear the navy Armani suit. AR Amber should have been offended by the presumption. Instead, she found herself smiling as she slipped into the most expensive clothes she'd ever worn. They fit perfectly, making her look like she belonged in Mateo's world. The SUV arrived at exactly 8 a.m. This time, Marcus, the driver, actually spoke. Mr. Ritchie wants you to know he appreciates punctuality. You'll do well with him, Miss Taylor. How long have you worked for him? 15 years, Marcus said, his eyes meeting hers in the rear view mirror.
Since he was barely older than you.
He's a good man, Miss Taylor. Complicated, dangerous in ways you can't imagine, but good, fair, loyal to those loyal to him and to those who aren't. Marcus's expression darkened. Don't find out. The penthouse felt different in daylight, less imposing somehow. Mateo waited in his office behind a massive desk of dark wood and chrome. He looked up when she entered, and something flickered in his eyes. Appreciation, desire, perfect, he said, standing. You look like you belong here. The clothes are an investment. You represent me now, Amber. How you present yourself reflects on me. He moved around the desk, gestured for her to sit. Now, let's begin your education. The next 4 hours were a blur. Mateo walked her through his schedule, his business operations, his expectations. He owned 12 restaurants across Manhattan, 3 import-export companies, 2 real estate development firms. Every business legitimate, every transaction documented and legal. I rebuilt this family's reputation from the ground up, Mateo explained, showing her spreadsheets that proved his point. My father, my uncles, they operated in the old ways. Blood and intimidation. I convinced them there was a better path. It took years, cost me relationships, nearly cost me my life twice. But now we're clean, powerful, untouchable by law enforcement because we're not breaking any laws. But people still fear you, Amber observed. Yes. Mateo's smile was cold. Because reputation is power. I let people believe I'm what my father was. It keeps competitors wary. Keeps my legitimate business partners honest. Fear is a tool, Amber. The key is knowing when to use it and when to show mercy. As afternoon approached, Matteo stood. Come, time for lunch. He led her not to a restaurant, but to a private dining room in the penthouse. A table was already set with lunch. Simple, elegant Italian food. Pasta carbonara, fresh bread, a green salad. Are you cook? Amber asked, surprised. I do many things that would surprise you. Matteo pulled out her chair, a gentlemanly gesture that felt natural to him.
Sit, eat.
We have much to discuss. As they ate, Matteo asked about her studies, her goals, her life. Not probing, just genuinely interested. Amber found herself opening up in ways she never did, telling him about her mother who died when she was 16. Her father, who disappeared into addiction afterward, leaving her alone. So you raised yourself, Matteo said quietly. I survived, Amber corrected. There's a difference.
No.
His hand crossed the table, covered hers. You did more than survive. You fought. You're fighting still. That takes courage. His touch sent heat racing through her veins. Amber looked up, met his eyes, and saw the same awareness reflected there. The attraction that had sparked at the restaurant was still there, burning brighter now that they weren't separated by the roles of customer and waitress. Matteo pulled his hand back abruptly, his jaw tight. I should be clear about something, Amber. Whatever this is between us, this pull, we can't act on it. You work for me. The power dynamic makes anything else inappropriate. I know, Amber whispered, though disappointment flooded through her. But I want to, Matteo continued, his voice rough. More than I've wanted anything in a long time, so we need rules, professional boundaries for both our sakes. Amber nodded, trying to ignore the ache in her chest. He was right. Of course, he was right. But knowing it didn't make the wanting go away. A phone rang, shattering the moment. Matteo checked the screen, and his entire demeanor changed. The man across from her disappeared, replaced by something colder, harder. I need to take this. Wait here. He stepped into his office, closing the door, but the walls weren't soundproof, and Amber couldn't help but overhear fragments. Matteo's voice, speaking rapid Italian, the words harsh and commanding. She caught enough to understand a problem with a shipment, someone trying to muscle in on territory. When Matteo emerged 15 minutes later, he looked older, tired. Everything okay? Amber asked carefully. No. He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling it. The life I left behind doesn't want to stay behind. My cousin Nero, he's complicated, wants to return to the old ways. Thinks I've made the family soft.
Have you?
I've made us smarter. Matteo's eyes blazed. Nero sees power as something you take with violence. I see it as something you build with patience and strategy, but he's gathering support among the old guard, and if he moves against me, what would happen? Matteo's laugh was bitter. War, Amber, blood on the streets. Everything I've built destroyed, and everyone close to me. He stopped, looked at her with sudden intensity. You should know what you've walked into. The danger is real. Then teach me, Amber said firmly, how to navigate it, how to protect myself. Don't keep me in the dark. Something shifted in Matteo's expression. Respect mixed with something darker. You're not afraid. I'm terrified, Amber admitted. But I'm more afraid of going back to barely surviving. You offered me a chance at a real life. I'm not giving that up easily. Matteo crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just inches from her. Too close. His scent overwhelmed her, his presence consuming all the air in the room. You're remarkable, he breathed. Do you know that, Matteo? I know. Boundaries, professional distance, but he didn't move away. His hand lifted, hesitated, then tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was feather-light, but it burned. But Amber, if circumstances were different, they're not, Amber whispered, though it took all her willpower to say it. No, Matteo agreed, finally stepping back. They're not. The moment shattered when Marcus burst through the elevator doors, his face pale. Boss, we have a problem. Nero's men were spotted in Brooklyn near Miss Taylor's building. Matteo went perfectly still. That cold, dangerous version of himself emerging fully. When? 20 minutes ago. They left before our guys could intercept. He knows about her already. Mateo's voice was deadly calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. Of course he does. He always was too smart for his own good. What does this mean? Amber asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Mateo turned to her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. Protection, possession, promise. It means you're not going back to that apartment. You'll stay here where I can protect you. I can't just move into your penthouse. You can and you will. Mateo's tone left no room for argument. Marcus, have a team retrieve Miss Taylor's belongings, everything. I want her apartment cleared and the lease terminated by tonight. Mateo, this is crazy. This is necessary. He cut her off. Nero won't stop at making a point. If he thinks hurting you'll get to me, he'll do it without hesitation. I won't. His jaw clenched. I won't let anyone hurt you because of me. Amber stared at him, her heart pounding. 24 hours ago, she'd been a struggling waitress. Now, she was caught in the middle of a mafia power struggle, protected by a man who looked at her like she was something precious and terrifying all at once. Okay, she said finally. But, Mateo, I need you to promise me something. Anything.
Don't lie to me.
Don't hide the danger. If I'm in this, I'm in it with eyes open. Mateo's expression softened. Deal. He extended his hand, and when she took it, he pulled her close, his forehead resting briefly against hers. I promise I'll keep you safe, Amber Taylor, even if it costs me everything. As Marcus left to follow orders, Amber and Mateo stood in the waning afternoon light, hands clasped, the city sprawling below them. Neither spoke about the line they'd just crossed, not physically, but emotionally. In that moment, they'd admitted what they both knew. This was no longer just about a job. This was something far more dangerous than any mafia war. This was two lonely people finding each other in the darkness and refusing to let go. Amber's belongings looked pitifully arranged in the guest room of Mateo's penthouse. 2 suitcases, 3 boxes of books, a handful of photos. Her entire life fit into 100 square feet of space that was probably worth more than she'd earn in 5 years. It's temporary, Mateo said from the doorway, reading her expression. Just until the situation with Nero is resolved. But they both knew it was a lie. Whatever was happening between them, this magnetic pull that grew stronger every hour they spent together wasn't temporary. It was inevitable. The first week passed in a carefully maintained dance of professional distance. Mateo taught her his business. She learned quickly how to read contracts, manage his schedule, anticipate needs before he voiced them. They were good together, their minds working in sync in a way that surprised them both. But the nights were harder. Amber would lie in her guest room, separated from Mateo's master suite by a hallway that felt both too long and too short. She'd hear him pacing sometimes late at night, his voice low as he conducted business in Italian. Other times, she'd wake to find him in the kitchen at 3 a.m., unable to sleep, making coffee he wouldn't drink. Nightmares? She asked one night, joining him by the windows. Memories, Mateo corrected. Worse than nightmares because they're real. He glanced at her. Something vulnerable in his expression. My father died when I was 22, killed by a rival family because he couldn't let go of the old ways. I found his body. That image, it never leaves. Amber's hand found his, without conscious thought.
I'm sorry. Don't be.
His fingers threaded through hers, warm and solid. It made me who I am. Taught me that violence creates nothing but more violence. That real power comes from being smarter, more patient than your enemies. Is that what Nero is? Your enemy? He's my cousin, my blood. Mateo's grip tightened, which makes this so much harder. If I move against him, the family fractures. If I don't, he'll eventually move against me. Either way, people die. There has to be another way. Mateo looked at her then. Really? Looked at her, and Amber saw the weight he carried. You still believe in happy endings, don't you? After everything, you've survived. I have to, Amber said simply. Otherwise, what's the point? He pulled her close then, wrapping his arms around her in a hug that was equal parts comfort and desperation. Amber's cheek pressed against his chest, hearing his heartbeat. Strong, steady, real. You make me want to believe again. Mateo whispered into her hair. That's dangerous, Olivia. Hope makes you careless or brave, Amber counted. They stood like that for long moments, the city lights flickering below them until Mateo finally released her with what seemed like physical pain. Go to bed, Amber. Before I forget all the reasons we can't do this. She went, but she didn't sleep. The next afternoon, Mateo had a business meeting that would last several hours. Stay in the penthouse, he instructed. Marcus is downstairs. Don't answer the door for anyone. Don't leave for any reason. I'm not a prisoner, Amber protested.
No.
Mateo cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. You're something far more valuable. You're someone he stopped, cleared his throat. Just stay safe for me. Amber nodded, ignoring the flutter in her chest at his touch, his words, his obvious concern. 2 hours later, the elevator dinged. Amber looked up from her laptop, expecting Mateo. Instead, a man she'd never seen before stepped out. Tall, dark-haired, handsome in a sharp-edged way that reminded her of broken glass. You must be Amber, he said, his Italian accent thick. I'm Nero, Mateo's cousin. Every warning bell in Amber's head started screaming. He's not here. I know. Nero smiled. And it was nothing like Mateo's smile. This one was all predator. No humanity. I came to see you. The woman who is my cousin so distracted. You need to leave. Do I? Nero moved further into the penthouse, examining it like he owned it. This used to be my uncle's place, family property, but Mateo took it just like he's taken everything else. Amber backed toward the kitchen where she knew Mateo kept a panic button. Your family's internal politics aren't my business. No, but you've become Mateo's business, his weakness. Nero's eyes were cold, calculating. Did he tell you about the old ways? How we used to handle threats? Stop. Amber's hand found the counter, inched toward the button. Whatever point you're making, I'm not part of this. But you are, Kara. The moment my cousin looked at you, you became part of this. And now, Nero pulled a gun from his jacket, not pointing it at her, just holding it casually. Now your leverage. Amber's finger found the panic button and pressed hard. Nero's smile widened. Oh, I know what you just did. Mateo's men will be here in 3 minutes, but I only need one. He raised the gun. The window behind Nero exploded inward. Mateo came through it like an avenging angel, his body slamming into Nero with the force of a freight train. They hit the floor hard, the gun skittering across the marble. Amber screamed, running for it, but Marcus appeared from the elevator, grabbing her, pulling her back. Don't look, Miss Taylor. Don't look. But she couldn't look away. Mateo was a force of nature. Every punch calculated to hurt but not kill. Every movement controlled despite the rage blazing in his eyes. He had Nero pinned in seconds, his knee on his cousin's throat. You came into my home. Mateo growled in Italian. Threatened what's mine. Give me one reason I shouldn't end you right here. Because I'm family, Nero choked out. And you don't kill family. That's your weakness, cousin.
No.
Mateo leaned close, his voice deadly quiet. My strength is knowing exactly how far to push without crossing the line. But Amber, she's not part of this world. She's innocent. And if you ever come near her again, family or not, I will make you disappear so completely that even God won't find you. He released Nero, stood, straightened his jacket. For more men had arrived, guns drawn. Mateo gestured to his cousin. Get him out of my sight, and send a message to the family council. Tomorrow night, emergency meeting. This ends now. As Nero was dragged away, Mateo turned to Amber. His knuckles were bleeding, his shirt torn, but his eyes were clear, focused on her. Amber. She launched herself at him, throwing her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. She was shaking.
Couldn't stop shaking.
And Mateo's arms came around her like steel bands. I've got you, he murmured, one hand cradling her head.
I've got you.
You're safe. I promise you're safe. He was going to shoot me, Amber gasped.
He was going to.
But he didn't. Mateo pulled back just enough to see her face, his hands framing it. Because I'll always come for you. Always. Do you understand? Amber nodded, tears streaming down her face. And then, because she was alive and he was here and nothing else mattered, she kissed him. Mateo froze for a heartbeat. Then he kissed her back like a man drowning, finally finding air. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, and Amber melted into him, into this moment, into everything she'd been trying to deny. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Mateo rested his forehead against hers. "This is a bad idea," he said, though his hands didn't release her. "The worst," Amber agreed. "We shouldn't."
We shouldn't, she echoed.
Neither of them moved away. "Amber." Mateo's voice was rough, raw. "If we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back. You become part of my world, completely. The danger, the complications, all of it. I know you could still walk away. I'd protect you. Set you up somewhere safe. Far from all of this." Amber pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "Is that what you want?"
No.
The word was torn from him. "God help me.
No.
I want you here with me. But Amber, I'm a selfish man. I'll keep you even if it's not safe. Even if you deserve better." "Then keep me," Amber whispered. "Because I don't want better. I want you." Mateo kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, acclaiming a promise. When he swept her into his arms and carried her toward his bedroom, Amber didn't protest. She'd made her choice. For better or worse, she'd chosen this dangerous, complicated, impossible man, and she'd never been more certain of anything in her life. The family council meeting took place in a private room at Richie's flagship restaurant. Amber watched from Mateo's office via security cameras, Marcus standing guard beside her. 20 men sat around a long table, Mateo at the head, Nero directly opposite him. The tension was visible even through the screen. "My cousin accuses me of making our family weak," Mateo began, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Of abandoning our traditions, of choosing profits over honor." He paused, letting the words hang. "He's right." Murmurs rippled through the room. Nero smiled, sensing victory. "I have abandoned the old ways," Mateo continued. "The ways that got my father killed. The ways that kept us constantly at war, constantly looking over our shoulders, constantly vulnerable to law enforcement. I chose a different path, and in 10 years, I've tripled our wealth, eliminated our legal exposure, and secured our future for generations." He stood commanding the room. "But my cousin mistakes security for weakness. So let me be clear about what I am willing to do." Mateo's eyes locked on Nero. "Yesterday, you threatened someone under my protection. Someone innocent in my home. That's not family politics. That's a declaration of war. So start one," Nero challenged. "Show everyone what you're really made of."
No.
Mateo's smile was cold. "Because unlike you, I think 10 steps ahead. You want the old ways? Violence and blood. I'm offering you a choice.
Come work for me.
Really work. Learn the legitimate business. Prove you can evolve, or take a very generous severance package and leave New York forever. And if I choose neither, then I call the FBI." Mateo's words dropped like a bomb. "I have evidence of every illegal operation you've been running on the side. Drugs, weapons, trafficking, things I've explicitly forbidden, enough to put you away for 30 years. Nero's face went white. "You wouldn't. Your family. You stopped being my family when you pulled a gun on an innocent woman." Mateo's voice was ice. "I protect what's mine, Nero. Always, and I eliminate threats. The only question is how you want this to end." The silence stretched. Then Nero stood through his napkin on the table. "You've gone soft, Mateo. One day you'll regret it. Is that your answer?" Nero looked around the table, reading the room. Every man there was watching Mateo with respect, even awe. Not one of them would back Nero's play. "I'll take the severance," Nero said, finally defeated. "But don't think this is over." "It is," Mateo said quietly. "Because if you ever come back to New York, if you ever threaten anyone I care about again, I won't give you a choice. I'll destroy you completely. And unlike you, cousin, I have the resources to do it." Nero left without another word. The other family members congratulated Mateo on his handling of the situation, on his wisdom, on his strength. But Amber saw the truth on Mateo's face, the cost of choosing peace over blood, even when blood was what part of him wanted. When he returned to the penthouse hours later, Amber was waiting. She'd made dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta, the way his grandmother used to make it, according to recipes she'd found in his kitchen. Mateo stopped in the doorway, staring at the table she'd set, the candles she'd lit. You didn't have to. I wanted to, Amber said.
Sit, eat.
Let me take care of you for once. They ate in comfortable silence, the weight of the day settling between them. After dinner, they moved to the couch. Mateo pulling Amber against his side, her head on his shoulder. You handled it perfectly, Amber said. Gave him a way out with dignity. I gave him a way to save face while eliminating him as a threat. There's a difference. Mateo's hand stroked her hair absently. But you're right. It could have ended much worse. You protected your family, the legal business, and me. Always you, Mateo murmured. You've become the most important thing, Amber. That should terrify me. But it doesn't. It just makes everything else clear. Amber lifted her head, meeting his eyes. What do you mean? Mateo shifted, pulling something from his pocket. A small velvet box. Amber's breath caught. I know it's fast, Mateo said. I know we've barely known each other 2 weeks, but I've never been more certain of anything. He opened the box, revealing a ring, emerald-cut diamond, platinum band, absolutely stunning. Marry me, Amber, not because you work for me, not because I'm trying to keep you safe, but because I love you. Because in 14 days, you've shown me what it means to truly live, not just survive. Tears streamed down Amber's face. Mateo, I know the complications. I know my world is dangerous. I know you deserve someone simpler, safer. But Amber, I'm a selfish man, and I'm asking anyway. Marry me. Let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, providing for you, loving you the way you deserve. Yes, Amber breathed. Yes, absolutely, yes. Mateo slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. When they finally broke apart, both were crying. I love you, Amber whispered. I didn't think I could.
It happened so fast.
But Mateo, I love you completely. I've loved you since you pronounced Brunello da Montalcino with that perfect accent. Mateo admitted, since you looked at me like I was just a man, not a monster or a god. You see me, Amber, the real me. That's rarer than you know. They made love that night with a tenderness that surprised them both. No urgency, no desperation, just two people finding home in each other's arms. Afterward, as Amber traced the tattoos on Mateo's chest, he told her their meanings. His father's death date, his mother's name, the coordinates of the place he decided to change his life. And this, Amber touched a blank space over his heart. That's for you, Mateo said. Your name? Once we're married, so everyone knows you're written on my heart forever. Amber kissed the spot, then his jaw, then his lips. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me this is real. That it's not just proximity or danger or loneliness. Promise me we'll still choose each other when things are calm and safe and boring. Mateo rolled them so he was above her, his eyes serious. Amber Taylor, I will choose you every day for the rest of my life. In danger and safety, in chaos and calm, in poverty and wealth. You're my person, my home, my everything. That's not going to change when things get boring. Though with us, I doubt they ever will. Amber laughed, pulling him down for another kiss. Good, because you're stuck with me now, Mateo Ricci. For better or worse. Definitely better, Mateo murmured against her lips. Always better. 3 years later, Amber stood in the kitchen of their new home. Not the penthouse, but a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights with a garden and a nursery upstairs. She had graduated from NYU with honors. Mateo attending every ceremony despite the threats that required a security detail. She worked part-time at Sacred Heart Hospital now, fulfilling her dream of helping people while still managing Mateo's legitimate business interests. The Mafia legacy was fading. Mateo had systematically converted every illegal operation into legitimate ventures, buying out or eliminating resistance with a combination of financial incentives and strategic pressure. The Richie name no longer whispered fear. It inspired respect. Amber heard the front door open. Mateo's voice calling. I'm home. Kitchen, she called back, smiling as their daughter Sophia came running through, dark curls bouncing, laughing as her father chased her. Mateo swept Amber into his arms, kissing her deeply despite Sophia's giggles and protests. How are my girls? Perfect now, Amber said, meaning it absolutely. She looked at her life. The husband who loved her completely. The daughter they'd welcomed a year ago. The home they'd built together. It was nothing like what she'd imagined that day she'd served wine to a dangerous stranger in an upscale restaurant. It was infinitely better. I love you, Mateo murmured, his hand resting on her stomach where their second child was growing. Thank you for choosing me, Amber. For choosing this life. Thank you for seeing me, Amber replied. But looking past the waitress to the woman underneath for being brave enough to love me. Mateo kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. Even after 3 years, the electricity between them hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown stronger, built on a foundation of trust and respect and genuine partnership. That evening, as they put Sophia to bed and retreated to their own room, Amber reflected on the journey from poverty to prosperity, from loneliness to love, from barely surviving to truly living. Happy, Mateo asked, pulling her against him. Completely, Amber said, and she was. Because sometimes the most dangerous choice is the one that saves you. Sometimes the man everyone fears is the one who sees you most clearly. Sometimes love doesn't happen slowly or safely. It strikes like lightning, fast and devastating and impossible to ignore. And sometimes, just sometimes, the girl from Brooklyn gets her fairy tale ending with the king of the city. Not because he saved her, but because they saved each other. Amber and Mateo's story has reached its beautiful conclusion. Thank you all for following the story. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from and share your thoughts about the story. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video as your support is important for me to continue creating content. Until the next story, take care of your heart.